You are the only thing that is standing in your way, and I can tell you that because I was also struggling with this, and I could not get the fuck out of my own way, and I was self-sabotaging every single aspect of my life. So today we're going to talk about 26 things that I learned in 26 years, because I just turned 27 last week, and I feel like in the 26 years of life experience that I had, I made the dumbest possible mistakes and worst decisions, and I just honestly really played myself. So we're going to talk about all the things that I learned and what I would do differently, how I would do everything now with the knowledge that I have, and just all of it, all the things. If you don't know me, my name is Haley, and I'm your realistic and balanced bestie, helping you build a stronger brain and body. Like I said, today we are covering all the things that I learned in 26 years. These are gonna be kind of all-encompassing lessons from every single aspect. So we've got some just general life advice, some relationship advice, some career advice, some mindset advice, all of it just all in one place. Before we get into it, please make sure that you are subscribed to my YouTube channel here, because it is so helpful. And you can also check the description for links to all of my other social media, as well as a bunch of free resources for your fitness and mindset journey. Now, let's go ahead and get into these 26 tips. Number one being that no one is coming to save you. And this is the one that genuinely, if someone had told me this like 10 years ago, I probably would have looked at them and been like, you're a fucking idiot, you don't know what you're talking about, you've never been through this, you don't understand what it's like. Like, I would have had a whole list of excuses as to why that didn't apply to me, because I so genuinely thought like somebody needs to come save me, like I need help. I genuinely looked at everything as if it was happening to me instead of happening for me, and I would get so in my head, and I was so convinced that nobody else on the entire planet had it as bad as me. And if you've ever dealt with that, you know what it's like, and you know that it sounds dumb to say that out loud, but genuinely in the moment I was like, somebody has to save me because I can't do this myself. Nobody is helping me. There's nobody that is here in my life that's supporting me. Like, I need help from an outside source. And I finally had to grow up and realize that it doesn't matter how bad the situation that you're in is. It doesn't matter what cards life throws at you. You are the only person that can actually get you out of it. It doesn't matter how many people you lean on to try to financially support you, to try to emotionally support you. There is no amount of support from other people that can actually get you out of a negative place, and you are the only person that has to be able to actually get you out of it. Because even if other people are helping you get out of this state, if you are not fully doing the work on your own mental to actually get yourself out of it and stay out of it, you're going to end up right back where you started. And it doesn't matter how many people help you out, because you are the only person that can actually get you to a place where no matter what life throws at you, you're going to be able to handle it, because you got yourself there all by yourself. And this isn't to say that nobody can ever help you and that you should never take support from anybody, but you need to make sure that you are always doing the work and doing your part to get you out of whatever situation it might be, whether it's a relationship, a job, anything that you don't like about your life and anything that isn't serving you. It's on you to change it, and you have to take full accountability of that and say that even if the shit that's happening to you isn't fair, and even if you got dealt a really shitty hand of cards, it is on you to play that hand and to figure out what you can do to get out of it. You're gonna feel so much better knowing that you did it yourself than knowing that you leaned on everybody else and that somebody else pulled you out of this place. Because if somebody else pulls you out of a dark place, you are essentially giving them the power to throw you right back in. But if you climb up out of that shit on your own, nobody else has the power to dump you back in there, because you got out of there. So you are always going to be able to get out of anything on your own because you did it yourself and you figured out what you needed to do. And I genuinely think I would have punched myself in the face if I told myself this 10 years ago, like I said, but I wish that somebody had broken it down to me in a way that I actually would have grasped, because I think I would have saved myself so much wallowing and so much self-deprecating jokes and humor and sadness, and I could have just saved myself so much time. Number two is that friends can be emotionally manipulative just the same as partners can be. And it almost sucks worse when a friend is emotionally manipulative or abusive or whatever it is, because we always assume that our friends are just unconditional love. And that's what friends are supposed to be. They're supposed to be there for you no matter what. There's not supposed to be any kind of conditions when it comes to a friendship kind of love. But just the same as we can get blindsided by someone that we're in a relationship with, a friendship is also kind of obviously a relationship, and the people that we become friends with can have control over us the same way that our partners can have control over us. And it's scary and it sucks, and it almost blindsides you worse, because when you're in a relationship, like a romantic relationship with somebody, you always have a little part of you that's kind of like, okay, is this person trying to control me? Do they want something from me? Do they want to change me? What's going on here? You're always kind of on high alert. But when it comes to friends, we let our guard down so much faster because we assume that this person doesn't want to change me. This person doesn't want to control me. They just want to be my friend. And it sucks to have to think of building friendships the same way that you go into a relationship with kind of your walls up. But I genuinely think that is the smartest thing to do, because as someone who has been burnt by some terrible, terrible friends over the years, I can 100% say that if I had just paid a little bit closer attention in the very beginning, I would have seen the red flags and I would have known, like, okay, this person probably does not have my best interest in mind. And now when I'm building friendships with people, I'm not fully standoffish, but I do take a little bit more time to really get to know the person and not fully put all of my trust into them right away, because I think that was a really big problem that I had, was assuming that friends were gonna have the same level of trust and the same care and love that I had, and that's just not always the case. So now my kind of litmus test when it comes to friendships is I ask myself if I would fully trust this person with my credit card, my car, and my house key. And if the answer is no, then this is probably not somebody that I should fully dive into a best friendship with. And I think kind of the same as relationships, a lot of times we think, oh, it's gonna get better, oh, it'll change, oh, this person's gonna grow up a little bit, and we just can't have that level of ignorance, because at the end of the day, whoever this person is showing you is who they are, and we have to stop having rose-colored glasses, even with friendships. But it sucks and it's sad, and it really is scary to know that not everybody goes into friendships with the goal of just having friends and having people that they can trust, but that is the reality of it. And it's not just something that happens when you're younger. I think once I passed high school, I let my guard down a lot with friends, because I was like, oh, we're like adults now, so what could this person possibly want from me, and how could they want to have anything other than a genuine friendship? But there's always going to be shitty people in the world, and we just have to have our guard up, even in friendship. Number 3 is that you need to have your own definition of what healthy means to you, because healthy means so many different things to so many different people, and there's not one right or wrong way to be healthy. Healthy doesn't necessarily mean skinny. It doesn't necessarily mean super lean. It doesn't mean a six-pack. It doesn't mean any of the things that we've been taught to believe that it means. And you have to understand what it means to you as a person. Does it look like being able to pick up your niece or nephew and play with them on a playground? Does it look like being prepared to go backpacking across Europe for 6 months? Does it look like just walking around and gossiping with your neighbors as you go on a little hawker walk? There are so many different things, and there's so many different options when it comes to health. And your health and your fitness journey needs to be something that actually means something to you and something that you enjoy doing. So figuring out, first of all, what healthy actually means to you as a person. And there is just such a wide spectrum of things that this could mean, and you just have to figure out where you lie on that spectrum. My favorite way to do this is actually just doing a good old little daydreaming session and seeing what the healthy habits of my ideal self really are. Like, what is she doing on a day-to-day basis? Is she taking classes? Is she going to the gym every single day? What is she eating? What does a typical day in the life look like for her? Just really envisioning what that person looks like, and then from there backtracking and being like, okay, this person does this every single day, so how can I start to incorporate these same habits into my current life until I bridge that gap between my ideal self and my current self? And you really have to get in your head and remind yourself that just because somebody else's version of healthy looks different doesn't mean that theirs is right and yours is wrong, or vice versa. It just means that you guys have different versions of what health looks like to you. Number 4 is that victim mindset is not cute, and it's on you to fix it. And this kind of ties into my first point, but I really think that I was so deep in a victim mindset that nobody could have told me anything. And if anybody in the entire world was trying to tell me that I was struggling with a victim mindset or tried to point out anything like that, I got so defensive, I was so upset by it, and I would use that as fuel to have more of a victim mindset, because I was like, see, even this person thinks that I'm a shitty human, or this person thinks that I'm too depressed, like all this stuff that was getting in my head, and it was just furthering the victim mindset that I was dealing with, because I just had no idea how to get out of it, and I didn't even realize that I had the capacity to actually heal that and to stop struggling with that. And I think that healing a victim mindset is something that takes a lot of accountability, and it's something that most people who are dealing with a victim mindset don't have the capacity to even start to unpack. And I think that's why so many of us get really sucked into it. And especially if you're growing up around someone who also has a victim mindset, then it's just kind of embedded into who you are and how you see the world. And it can get kind of scary, and it honestly does look scary looking back on it once you're out of it and you're like, oh my God, I actually used to think this way. I really was so convinced in this little bubble that I lived in that everything was out to get me, that everyone had the worst intentions, and that life was unfair, and that everything was just made to try to put me down. It's really hard to try to stop looking at things as good or bad that happen to you, but I think that's kind of the biggest key, is to start just looking at things that happen to you and just being like, this is happening. Like, there's no good or bad. This isn't something that's good karma that's coming to me because I'm a good person. I think I struggle a lot with that because I grew up very Southern Baptist and very Christian, and I would look at things that happened to me that were bad as punishments, or oh, I must have done something wrong to have this happen to me. And I really, really struggled to get out of that mindset because it gets so ingrained into you. And especially when you're growing up in a situation like that, it can be so easy to really just dive into that victim mindset head first and just fully trust that that's normal, that you should always be thinking like that because things are out to get you and life is unfair, and if something bad's happening, it's probably because of something you did, so it's probably still your fault. And you really have to just snap yourself out of that and be like, there is no good, there is no bad, like nothing is fair, nothing is unfair, nothing's good, nothing's bad. It's just happening. It is just life. And from there, you can start to just take it as it is and try to actually figure out actionable ways to get around whatever's happening in your life, because things are always going to happen, and it doesn't matter how good of a person you are, how bad of a person you are, sometimes shit just happens. Number 5, and this might be my most controversial one, but the entire system that we live in was designed to try to pin people against each other. And I genuinely, wholeheartedly think that every single aspect of entertainment, TV, TikTok, YouTube, whatever it is, it's trying to pin you against people that are not like you. And I think we kind of all know it at this point that pretty much everything is made to pin us against each other, whether it be politics, entertainment, social media, whatever it is, every single aspect is trying to find your side of the line and pin you against the people that are on the opposite side. And obviously when it comes to things like morality, yeah, you're allowed to kind of be against people who have completely different morals than you and are, for example, wanting certain people to not be alive anymore. But I mean, when it comes to smaller things, I think as a whole, it's really on us to try to have some kind of compassion and start to just listen to other people that maybe don't look like us, maybe don't act like us, maybe have different hobbies, different culture, whatever it is. It's on us to actually listen to those people and see what they're like and not feed into a bias of somebody living somewhere and acting a certain way or somebody wearing a certain thing and acting a certain way. It is on us to get out of that mindset and actually start to look at people as individuals instead of being like, oh, well, they associate with this group of people, so they must be like that. That is exactly what everything in society wants you to do, and that's why they've created everything the way that they have. And it's 100% on every single one of us as an individual person to snap out of that. Number 6 is that your gut feeling isn't going to magically just talk to you, especially if you've been through trauma or you've been through something that causes you to just not really trust your gut as much as you should. And I think this is something that's really hard when you're somebody who's been through a lot in their life, because we really don't know how to trust our gut that much. And it can be really hard to be like, oh, well, everybody says when you know, or just trust your gut. And you're sitting there like, I literally don't know what that means. I don't know how to trust my gut because I have insane anxiety, or I just don't even know what my gut feeling is supposed to feel like. I don't know what my normal is supposed to feel like. So how do I know what my gut feeling is supposed to feel like? And I just think we don't talk enough about how your gut feeling is something that you have to work on. And I think some people naturally are a little bit more in tune with it than others. But I do think, again, that when you've been through a lot of things and you just don't really trust yourself, it makes it harder for you to trust your gut. And so when you hear advice like, oh, just trust your gut, just go with your instinct, just follow your heart, that is something that is going to only really stress you out if you're somebody who doesn't know how to trust your gut. And so it's on you to start to figure out how you can actually trust your gut instinct, how you can get in tune with that, how you can figure out who you are as a person so that you can learn what your gut instinct is actually telling you. Because if you don't know these things and you don't have a relationship with yourself, you're not going to trust your gut, because that's like a stranger coming up to you and being like, oh, you should take this job for this amount of money and you should start tomorrow. If you don't know the stranger, you're not going to trust what they're saying. And it's the same with your gut feeling. If your gut is a stranger to you, you're not going to trust it. And you have to build that relationship with yourself so that you can actually learn to trust whatever your gut is actually telling you. Number 7 is one that typically I feel like I hear people talk about in romantic relationships, but this goes for any relationship, whether it's a friendship, a family member, whatever it is. When you are having a disagreement or an argument with somebody, it is not you versus them. It's you two versus the problem. And this is such a good mindset shift to make when you are starting a fight with somebody, or when you're having a disagreement or an argument, whatever it is. If it's somebody that you can actually say this to and be like, hey, can we take a second and remember that we're not fighting each other right now. I'm not fighting you. We are trying to address this common issue that we're both having. So how can we better try to figure out how to actually attack this thing instead of attack each other? And if it's someone you're in a relationship with and you guys can make kind of a code word to be like, oh, when I say this and we're in an argument, that's going to be our moment to take a reminder that we're not fighting each other. That's not the goal here. I highly recommend doing something like that, or even just making code words in general for different situations with your partner or even with your friends. Because when we're high on emotion and we're just in a really triggered state of mind, it can be so hard to actually be like, okay, wait a minute, let me take a step back and remember what we're actually trying to do here. Number 8 is that learning shouldn't stop after school ends. And I feel a little bit like a hypocrite saying this because I did drop out of college after just a semester, but I didn't stop learning. I realized that that just wasn't the route for me, and that what I was studying in school just didn't really have any kind of weight in my life, and that I really just didn't need to do it. And I think it was crazy when I dropped out of school because my whole family knew me as somebody who was really smart, really good at school, really good at learning, and they assumed that, oh, I just wasn't trying to learn anymore. I just didn't want to continue growing and educating myself, and that wasn't the case. I just didn't want to do it in the situation that I was in at the time, but I still am constantly trying to find new resources to try to learn things. I really like auditing college classes. That's been a really fun way for me to learn, and it kind of gives you the system of having a very scheduled, very on task kind of learning situation without actually being in school. I use the app EDX for this because I just think it's really nice, and they're all pretty much free. You can actually pay to get certification classes through there too, but I just really enjoy it. I'm a big fan. I also have heard of Coursera classes. Those ones seem to be really good, and also Skillshare is a really good option for just improving what you're learning on. And none of this is sponsored, obviously, but I just genuinely think that trying to further your education on whatever it is and really focusing on the things that you're actually interested in learning about. So we are so lucky to be in a time where we have YouTube, we have podcasts. If you have any kind of thing that you want to learn about, any topic, any specific, really niche, detailed thing that you want to learn, there's a video out there, there's a podcast about it. There is something out there that will teach you whatever you want to know step by step. And I think that is just such a crazy and such a cool thing for us to be able to like have at our fingertips. And I really think that it blows my mind when I realize that people aren't taking advantage of this, because I'll talk to people who are like, oh, I've literally never listened to a podcast in my life. And I'm like, what do you mean? What do you mean? What? Like, that is literally insane to me. I cannot wrap my head around it, because I'm just like, what do you mean you don't watch educational content? You don't listen to educational content. You're not listening to audiobooks. You're not reading. Like, there are so many things that are just mind-blowing to me, and this is one of the biggest ones. So if you are not learning something in some way, technically this episode is kind of educational, so I'm gonna give it to you. If you're watching this or listening to this, you're learning. So number 9 is that when people show you who they are, believe them right off the bat. We are so used to giving people chance after chance and really just trying to see the good in people and assume that, oh, people always have the best intentions, people always have good hearts, whatever. That is not the case. That is not the case for actually a majority of people. And it's sad, especially when you're somebody who actually does have good intentions and you actually want the best for people. But you have to realize that not everybody is like that. And a lot of times people show us the truth about themselves very early on in getting to know them, and we brush it off because we're like, oh no, surely that was an accident. that must have just been a crazy fluke. They must be going through something. There's got to be an explanation for it. And especially if you're someone like me who really likes to know why people are the way they are, that makes it a lot easier for us to make excuses about people, because we're like, oh, well, they did this because of this and this and this. And just because you understand why they did it doesn't mean you have to allow them to do it to you again, because that's the truth, is that if someone did something to you once, they're more likely to actually continue doing this to you and to try to test the limit to see what else they can get away with. So I recommend really trying to just be as unbiased as possible when getting to know somebody, or even in long-term relationships or long-term friendships. The moment that someone does something that makes you stop and be like, I don't know if I like this about this person. I don't know if I trust that. I don't know if I want that in my life. Learn to listen to that and write it down if you have to. The more physical evidence you can make for yourself, even if you're just writing in a journal, writing it in your notes app, having things actually written down so that you can look back on them and be like, okay, I'm not crazy. Like, this is not a normal or a healthy thing for someone to do. And that's going to give you a little bit more of a standing when you do decide to end a friendship or a relationship or whatever it is, because you can look back and be like, okay, I actually really do not like that this person did this. I don't want this person in my life. I don't trust them. Whatever it is, you can actually have tangible evidence to look at and be like, I am making the right decision. Because what fucks us up is when we're not 100% sure that we're making the right decision, because we're kind of morphing the past and we're putting all those excuses onto the things that they've done to us. And that gives us no clear standing to actually look at. And so then we stay in these relationships longer than we need to because we're making excuses and we're not actually looking at the facts of what happened. Number 10 is actually a quote that is very oversimplified, and I'm 100% aware of that. But I heard it actually pretty recently, and it really is a pretty good, again, oversimplified way of me kind of getting out of my head a little bit when I'm going through something. And it's just the quote that says that depression is a lack of options and anxiety is too many options. And again, that's not always the case. Obviously, these are things that are a lot deeper than that. But when I am going through something, I try to remind myself, okay, am I dealing with too little options right now, or am I dealing with too many options and it's overwhelming me and I need to figure out which one of those steps that I need to take? Or do I not have enough options right now and I need to figure out how to figure out some options to get me out of whatever I'm going through? That has been such a game changer for me because it really helps me to snap out of the emotions of whatever thing I'm going through and really try to get to the root of it, because the more that you can get to the root of what the problem is, the more that you can slowly work your way through the emotional side of it. And I am a firm believer in working through your emotions and working through whatever you're going through. But I think that to do that, again, you have to have some kind of starting point. And having a starting point that is more based on just factual evidence and more actionable things is a great way to really snap yourself out of the emotional side of it and actually start to feel like you have some options. Number 11 is that your ego is not you. And that voice that you're hearing in your head is a lot of times actually your ego and not actually you. So your ego is the version of you that is so concerned with what other people are thinking, and the version of you that is constantly like, okay, well, this person's gonna think this, so you need to do this, and you need to watch this, and you need to make sure you don't look like this, and suck in and pull your shoulders back. And you always are trying to make yourself look better and appear better to other people, and you have to figure out how to become a watcher of this voice and realize that this ego voice in your head is not you. And a lot of times figuring out who you are is actually figuring out who the person is and how they are reacting to this ego voice in your head. I highly recommend reading the book The Power of Now, because that's one that really, I think, breaks this down in a way that I really can't do in a very short term kind of moment. But I think it really gives a great starting point to start to nail this practice down and start to listen to your ego voice and really start to understand who you actually are. Because once you see how the real you is reacting to this ego voice, that's going to give you a clearer idea of who you actually are, what your values are, what your morals are, and that's going to be how you're actually going to change your life, because you can't change your life if you're basing everything on your ego voice. Number 12 is that debt is a bitch and you need to stay out of it as much as humanly possible. And again, I really wish somebody had explained this to me in a way that I actually cared about when I was younger, because I don't have much debt, but I did get into debt very easily when I was younger, and I feel very lucky to have gotten out of it at 27 years old and to be in a position where I am debt free at the current moment, which is like crazy to me. but as much as you possibly can, do not get into debt that you cannot afford. Don't get into debt that you know you can't ever pay back. And even when it comes to things like taking money from other people or loans from other people, I highly recommend staying away from that as much as possible, because it is just the number one way to turn friends into enemies or turn friends into transactional relationships, and it makes things so stressful. I have seen it so much where it's like, oh, I borrowed $20 from this person, but then you guys go out for drinks and then that person is like, oh, well, you're buying a drink, so can you give me $20? And it's like, it's one of those situations where if you've seen it from the outside, you can physically feel the stress and the tension that it causes on a relationship. And I just highly recommend trying to stay out of it as much as possible. Obviously, we are in a time where everything's expensive. Everything kind of sucks, and I 100% understand how debt is happening, but I highly, highly, highly recommend trying to avoid it as much as possible. Number 13 is figure out your vitamin deficiencies, and you're gonna save yourself a hell of a lot of time and heartache and confusion about your health. If you can get a blood panel or just a vitamin test done by a doctor, I highly recommend doing that. But there are also a bunch of ways to just kind of test your symptoms online and see what your vitamin deficiencies could be. This is obviously not as accurate, but if you have no other options, I would recommend doing that. I actually found out that I was iron deficient because I was trying to donate plasma, and they have to test your iron levels before they do it, and the girl was like, absolutely not. You are literally so low on iron, we can't take your plasma. And she told me, go home, eat a steak, drink some orange juice so that it absorbs a little bit better. Come back tomorrow, we'll see. I came back the next day and she was like, your levels are even lower than they were yesterday, and I don't understand how that's possible. And that was how I discovered that I was iron deficient. So, and once I knew that, I was like, oh my God, so many things make sense to me now. I realized that I had all of the signs of an anemic person, and I just didn't actually know that because I had never looked into it and I never thought of it as an option. But there are also so many things like vitamin D deficiency, vitamin B deficiency. There are so many deficiencies out there, and so many of us are deficient in numerous different vitamins because we just don't get them in our diets like we're supposed to. And obviously getting them through real food is going to be the most ideal, but a lot of times it's just easier to take a supplement, and it's a really great place to start and to actually test and see if this is going to make a difference in your life. So definitely look into figuring out what your deficiencies are, because you're going to realize so many things about yourself and everything is going to start to click, and you're going to be like, oh, I was doing that because I was deficient. Oh, that's why my body was doing that. That's why I thought that. There's so many things that you're going to discover once you figure out what you're deficient in. Number 14 is possibly my most embarrassing one, and also one that I so wish someone told me at 18 years old. But if you are getting matching tattoos with somebody, always make them go first. Always. Just don't. It doesn't matter if you think this person's your best friend, always make them go first, because I got matching tattoos with somebody that I'm obviously no longer friends with at this point in my life, but I got mine so much bigger than she got hers, and I remember being like, wait a minute, like, we agreed on doing it this size, like we agreed on this, like we had drawn it out, we had like planned it, whatever. And she ended up literally getting hers so tiny, so minuscule, it was literally impossible to even know that we had matching tattoos. And I just ended up with something that people were like, what is that? Why do you have that tattoo? And I would try to say, oh, it's a matching tattoo. And then they would look at her and be like, oh, what's your matching tattoo? Like, what's the one that goes with this? And she would show them and they would be like, that doesn't make any sense. And I was like, yeah, I know, because I went first and I thought we had a plan, but obviously we didn't. So do not. Honestly, this should just be, don't get matching tattoos with someone. But if you are gonna get matching tattoos with somebody, make them go first. Every single time. Number 15 is don't feel bad about vetting the people who are trying to do any kind of business transaction with you. Even if it's a roommate situation, even if it's just a coworker situation, whatever it is, do not let people make you feel bad about really trying to figure out who the fuck they are and like kind of vetting them or getting proof about their income, whatever it is. And I feel like this is a very niche one, but I've seen it a lot and I've been through it a lot, where especially with roommates and things like that, that you might not actually know when maybe you met on a roommate group or something like that, and they get almost offended when you're asking them like, oh, can you send me your bank statements? Can you show me your pay stubs? Can you actually prove to me that you can pay this money? And if somebody is getting upset with you about that, or they're getting mad that you're asking for proof or any kind of validation of them being who they say they are, then not only is that a ginormous red flag, but you shouldn't have to feel bad about asking people to prove who they are, especially if it's someone you don't know. This is a very normal thing, and you shouldn't let anybody make you feel bad about it, and you shouldn't be like, oh, maybe I'm being too crazy, maybe I'm a bad person for asking them for all this proof. No. If it is anything to do with your money, your credit, your life, anything in general, you are allowed to be as anal as you could ever want to be, because this is your life and this is up to you. You need to take control of it, and you need to make sure that the people who you are bringing into your life are actually the people that they say they are. Number 16 is that every single person you meet is going to have an opinion of you based on their own perception. So all of us do this every single time that we meet someone, and a lot of times we get almost offended when somebody has an opinion of us, or when we hear like, oh, so-and-so doesn't like you, or so-and-so says that you're a bad person. And we get offended because we're like, oh my God, how could they ever possibly think that about me? But the truth is, this is just something that happens because all of us have our own perceptions of things. All of us have our own biases, our own thoughts, our own ways of overthinking, that we might look at somebody and we might take a situation completely out of context, but in our minds, it's completely valid. And we are just taking our own perception of this person, and we are also projecting our own beliefs and our own thoughts onto this person, onto every single person that we meet. And if they do something that doesn't align to us, we are now believing that this person's a bad person, when maybe that's not the situation at all, and maybe we're just overthinking it, or maybe we just got a completely wrong view of what just happened, and that's just something that's completely normal. And we need to start to accept that a little bit more, because it's so easy to get offended and be like, oh my God, how could they think this of me? How could they believe this? How could they see that? When every single one of us is doing it all the time. And it's just a very normal part of life, is to project our own biases and our own opinions onto somebody else. And a lot of times we don't even realize that we're doing it. And then we suddenly have a view of somebody that might not actually be anything related to who they actually are as a person. Number 17 is that all religions are actually just based on the same basic principles. And I think the fact that every religion kind of pins each other against themselves is just further proof of point number 5, where everything is trying to pin us against each other. But I do think it's crazy when you take a step back and you're like, okay, the basis of pretty much every religion is just deciding what you want and then trusting that it's going to happen. That's it. The only thing that changes is what you're putting your trust in. And I think if we could all just realize that that's pretty much what everybody's doing. When they say keep the faith or just trust or whatever, you are just kind of letting go and just letting things happen and letting it flow. And all of us just have our own way of believing that. But again, as somebody who grew up very strict Southern Baptist and obviously does not practice any real form of anything like that anymore, I really struggled with this because I was so under the belief that my religion was right and that what I believed was better than everybody else. And I really wish somebody had just said like, hey, all of us are kind of on the same kind of journey and we're all kind of believing the same thing. We just have different ways of going about it. Number 18 is that enjoying your form of movement is more important than the results that you're going to get from that form of movement. So if you like going on a run, go on a run as much as possible. If you hate going on runs, don't force yourself to go on a run because you think that it's going to burn the most fat. Worrying about the results is the reason that a lot of us hate working out, hate going to the gym, hate doing whatever form of movement we're doing, because we're going about it with the wrong kind of mindset. We're going about it as a punishment, when in reality, if you're fully able-bodied and you're capable of moving, you should want to move your body as much as possible. And if you don't feel that desire, it just means you haven't found the form of movement that you actually enjoy yet. And once you find something that you actually love, you're going to want to do it all the time. And you're going to be like, oh, how can I fit this into my schedule? Because it's something that I like doing. Number 19 is thinking of my life as seasons of TV shows has been one of the best ways for me to really just become okay with letting people go, letting certain things end, and just kind of moving on from certain situations. Because in my mind, I'm pretty much imagining it like, okay, this is just the end of season 6, episode 7. Like, that's it. Like, on to season 7. And it really allows me to just segment my life out a little bit more and be like, okay, well, that's left in season 6. So if somebody wants to come into season 7, then it's open, it's fine. And it's such a small mindset shift, but I swear it's made such a big difference because it's really allowing me to stop holding on to things from season 1 when I know for a fact that person's not supposed to be my friend anymore. Number 20 is if you don't have friends that you could trust giving your car, your house key, and your credit card over to, you don't have friends. And I know I kind of mentioned this earlier, but it really is such a good way to look around the people that are in your life and be like, could I actually trust you with these things? Like, do I 100% know for a fact that if I were to give all these things over to you, they would come back completely fine and you wouldn't spend a rack on my credit card, you wouldn't put me into debt, you wouldn't trash my house. And it's such a small thing, but it's even in the small principles. Like, if I gave you my car, would you leave your trash in it? Like, if I let you into my house, would you remember to do my dishes? Like, could I actually trust you to treat all of my things with the same respect that you would treat your own? Number 21 is that comparing our bodies to one another is completely useless because even if we all ate the exact same food and did the exact same workouts, we would also have completely different bodies. And that is such a good reminder to really realize, like, I cannot be looking at this person's body and being like, I want their body, because even if I did exactly what she's doing, I'm not gonna look the same as her. And that's such a lie that we've been fed, that like, oh, this is the workout I did to get this body, this is what I ate to get this body. Even if you follow that to a T, you're not gonna look like her because she has her own genetics, she has her own ways that she distributes fat on her body. There are so many things that are different about every single one of us, and trying to do certain things in order to get a certain body type is literally a recipe for disaster. There is no way that it's ever going to work, and you are so much better off looking at your own body and figuring out what you actually want for yourself instead of looking at somebody else and thinking, I want that, I want to look like them. Number 22 is that you have to be okay with starting over no matter how many times you have to do it, because it's just a part of life. And I think I used to get really stuck on, oh, I don't want to have to start over, I've come this far, I should just be able to keep going. And sometimes it's not possible. Sometimes you have to start over from absolutely ground zero in order to get to where you actually want to go. Number 23 is that sandwiching any criticism that you have is the best way to keep relationships happy. So whether it's a friendship, a romantic relationship, a family member, whatever it is, if you can sandwich whatever you want to say to them inside of 2 compliments, that is the best way to do it. This also goes for any kind of coworker or employee relationship, anything in the office setting, whatever it is. Try to start it with a compliment, then say whatever your criticism is, and then end it with a compliment. And I swear to God, you're gonna be like, wow, everybody in my life loves me. Number 24 is that finding yourself is more about creating yourself than it is about getting to know who you are. And obviously, there's a little bit of a balance here, but a lot of times when we're trying to find ourselves, what we're actually doing is figuring out who we want to be and trying to get there. It's not about finding who you are and looking back on everything and figuring out what you should do. It's finding out what you want to do and then figuring out how to get there. And I think it's just such a small thing. But when we're growing up around people who are like, you need to find yourself, you need to figure out who you are, you need to do this, that is not the real way to actually get what you want in life. You have to figure out what you want, and then you have to figure out what's holding you back from it and what you need to do to actually get there. Number 25 is to always have a plan B. And I used to be so against this. I used to think that if you have a plan B, that means you don't want your plan A bad enough, and that's just not the truth. And having a plan B doesn't always mean, oh, I think that plan A isn't gonna work, so that's why I have this. It just could be a different way to get to plan A. And that's what really switched my mindset with this, because I used to think, oh, well, if I pick a plan B, it's gotta be something completely different that has nothing to do with my plan A. Your plan B can just be different ways to get you to plan A. Your plan C could be a different way to get you to plan A. There is nothing wrong with having a plan B, and it really is one of the best ways to kind of give yourself a little bit more confidence, because if you know that you have other options to get you to this end goal, you're gonna feel a lot more confident taking a big leap on plan A when you know, okay, I have plan B, plan C, plan D that I could fall back on and still get me to this end goal. And number 26, and possibly the biggest thing that I wish I understood when I was younger, is that if you think you suck at communication, all you have to do is learn to ask people questions about themselves. And I used to be so bad at small talk, at just getting to know new people. I used to get so awkward. I was so in my head. And then I finally learned, You just have to ask people questions about themselves. People love talking about themselves. That's all they want to talk about at all times. So if you can learn to just ask some really basic questions to people and actually listen and actually care, and then follow up on whatever things they end up saying to you with other questions, you are going to form so many more relationships with people, and it's going to feel so much more natural because you're not having to force it. You're just genuinely asking them questions about what they've already said to you. I'm not going to lie, coming up with 26 things was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be, but I am really glad that I feel like I kind of all encompassed everything that I wish I had known when I was younger. And I think at any age, these are things that I would 100% stand by, and things that I wish that every single person knew, and things that I just wish that I knew a lot sooner in life. So please do me a favor and drop a comment below and let me know which one of these 26 things stood out the most to you, or which one shocked you the most, because I want to know that I'm not crazy and that other people actually related to a majority of these things. And as always, if you're looking to further your fitness and mindset journey, a link to my app is going to be down below in the description, and you can get 2 weeks for free. So I hope to see you there, but if not, I'll just catch you in the next episode. And until next time, be kind to your mind, to your body, and to others, and happy healing.